Not only is it fair to say that the identification, assessment and control of hazards is fundamental to the management of workplace safety, it is also a legal and moral obligation for every organisation to have a safe workplace. This means that in an effort to reduce accidents and injuries, consideration is given to many things, such as workplace design and layout, the provision of appropriate guards and interlocks, written safety procedures, availability of required personal protective equipment, appropriate signage and labelling, access to material safety data sheets, regular safety training sessions, and so on. But despite all of this, accidents and injuries still occur, many of which occur as a direct or indirect result of unsafe acts. It is, however, an area of some controversy just how the subject of unsafe acts fits into the overall picture of how safety should be managed in the workplace. There are two views. One takes the position that unsafe acts contribute to the large majority of all accidents, and therefore the way to improve safety is to concentrate on the principle of observing people performing their job tasks, and then use, amongst other things, positive reinforcement to encourage safe behaviour. The other view is that unsafe acts can still be best controlled by utilising what is commonly referred to as the hierarchy of hazard control measures. This view is based on the premise that a safe working environment is the obvious starting point to reduce accidents and injuries, and that unsafe acts that aren't a result of unsafe conditions can be best controlled by adopting administrative control measures, such as appropriate training and the development of effective safe work procedures. Regardless of the view, it is an undeniable fact that unsafe acts do contribute to many accidents and injuries. So let's start our look at unsafe acts by first defining exactly what an unsafe act is. An unsafe act is an intentional or unintentional violation of an established safe work practice, procedure, method, or system. So what causes unsafe acts? What are the factors that lead to unsafe acts occurring in the workplace? Arguably, the most common cause can be categorised as indifference. In these situations, safe methods are known, but individuals simply choose to ignore them. Examples can include such things as not using proper manual handling techniques, not obtaining an appropriate work permit, not wearing required personal protective equipment, and so on. The other large group of causes of unsafe acts can be categorised under the heading of a lack of knowledge. This lack of knowledge can come from a number of different sources, including inexperience, but is predominantly a result of a lack of job training. Lack of knowledge also comes into play when people perform jobs that they're neither trained, certified, nor authorised to carry out. The unauthorised use of a forklift is a common example of this. Associated with the lack of knowledge or training is poor work habits. Familiarity and repetition of a particular job task sometimes leads to the formation of poor work habits. Poor work habits can not only develop over a period of time, they can also result from the setting of poor examples. For instance, new employees may pick up bad habits from more experienced employees. As well as these large groups of causes of unsafe acts that we've just looked at, there are a number of other causes. Lack of concentration is another common factor contributing to unsafe acts. Pressures of work, personal problems, daydreaming, becoming involved in conversation and so on can all take your mind off the job. Physical limitations of individuals may be an important factor. People with poor eyesight, impaired hearing, poor physical health, or simply people who do not have the required physical strength may well be unsuited for particular job tasks. And even individuals who are physically suited to a particular task can suffer from fatigue. Fatigue is a proven contributory factor in many accidents. The desire to complete a task quickly is another recognised cause of unsafe acts. So too is laziness. Both laziness and haste frequently lead to shortcuts being taken. Clowning around in the workplace is another common cause of workplace accidents. Losing control of your emotions, particularly losing your temper, can also lead to workplace accidents occurring. The effects of alcohol, drugs and medicines can result in an altered conscious state that in turn can be a contributory factor in some accidents and injuries. And finally, deliberate, malicious or criminal acts or acts of sabotage. So, in summary, the causes for unsafe acts occurring are indifference, lack of knowledge, poor work habits, lack of concentration, physical limitations and fatigue, haste, laziness, horseplay, loss of emotional control, altered consciousness, and deliberate, malicious or criminal acts. A total of 11 main causes, all of which can or do lead to unsafe acts. The two most prominent groups being acts of indifference and acts resulting from a lack of knowledge. So we know what the causes or the factors are that lead to unsafe acts, but what are the outcomes? The most common outcome is nothing at all. The vast majority of unsafe acts do not lead to any immediate adverse effects. However, a small percentage of unsafe acts will result or contribute to accidents that lead to injuries and or damage to equipment and goods. And some unsafe acts will have cumulative consequences that can lead to long-term health-related problems. For example, not wearing required hearing protection could lead to hearing problems, and of course not using proper manual handling techniques could lead to back-related problems. It's clear that unsafe acts occur regularly in every workplace, and the more unsafe acts that occur, the more likely serious accidents and long-term health problems will result. So the obvious question that arises is, how do we reduce the number of unsafe acts and hence reduce the number of resulting accidents, injuries and illnesses? Unfortunately, there is no easy answer. And in reality, the only logical solution is to concentrate on a combination of three measures: maintaining and implementing appropriate engineering control measures, maintaining and implementing appropriate administrative control measures, and modifying people's behaviour and improving their attitude towards safety. Measure number 1, engineering controls, is all about making the working environment physically as safe as possible. It is obviously critical from an organisation's point of view that all the potential hazards that exist on site have been identified, assessed, and, whenever necessary, suitable engineering control measures have been put in place. This measure won't in itself prevent unsafe acts from occurring, but it will reduce the likelihood that unsafe acts will result in serious accidents and injuries. Administrative controls, on the other hand, have a much more direct link with unsafe acts. Administrative controls include such things as the preparation of written safe work procedures, the provision of appropriate training, the provision of signs and labels, and such things as introducing additional work breaks. In effect, this means that administrative controls set the standards by which an organisation handles many of its safety issues. It provides the structure to supply both the knowledge and the education necessary for people to work safely. But both engineering controls and administrative controls together won't properly address the issue of unsafe acts. The other factor that must be addressed to minimise the occurrence of unsafe acts is, of course, the human factor. People's behaviour and their attitudes towards safety issues have a huge impact on the number of unsafe acts that occur, particularly on the group of unsafe acts we described earlier as acts of indifference. When people choose to violate a safe work practice, procedure, method, system or rule, the spoken or unspoken justification is often one of the following. It's too complicated. It takes too long. It's outdated. It doesn't apply to me. It's wrong. It's unnecessary. Or it's just as safe doing it the way I've always done it. The question this raises is, how can people be convinced to be committed to follow safe work practices and procedures all the time? The answer starts by having in place safety practices and procedures that are seen by the majority of the workforce as being both reasonable and necessary. This is not difficult to achieve when dealing with safety issues that present an immediate physical threat, such as dealing with toxic chemicals. The natural human reaction of self-preservation reinforces the need to approach these obvious physical threats with caution. The major difficulty arises with practices and procedures that relate to activities where no immediate physical injury is considered either consciously or subconsciously as a likely outcome. With these situations, people have to be educated to appreciate the potential risks that may exist and why a particular practice or procedure has been put in place. Acceptance of safe work methods must be an organisation-wide commitment, and encouragement for everyone to adhere to safe work methods must be given. Safety attitudes in the workplace can and do change. One example that illustrates this point very well is the general acceptance by people to wear personal protective equipment, particularly hard hats and safety glasses or goggles. It was not many years back when the wearing of hard hats and glasses was a real safety issue in many organisations. People were educated on the advantages of wearing the equipment, they were encouraged, and in many cases, even forced to comply with the requirements. The end result was a widespread behavioural change that has, in turn, led to a widespread attitude change. Few people these days would argue the value of a hard hat and safety glasses, and few would breach a safe work practice by not wearing them for required tasks. Creating and maintaining a workplace culture that will encourage people to continually follow safe work practices and procedures is not an easy task. It requires appropriate levels of education and training, enforcement of safety standards, encouragement, and good leadership. It is, however, a goal that is worth striving for, as the end result will be a significant reduction in the number of unsafe acts that occur. This in turn will result in fewer accidents and injuries and will produce a measurable decrease in risk exposure. Unsafe acts do contribute to many accidents and injuries and must be addressed as an important safety issue. Arguably, it is the single most important safety issue that exists.